Donovan Mitchell's name has been thrown around in rumors all summer long. Whether or not he gets his move away from Utah Jazz remains uncertain, and unlike Kevin Durant, he hasn't even asked for a trade deal, so he hasn't burned all the bridges in his processes. All that said and done, there's still doubts over a possible Mitchell to the Knicks deal, and complicating matters is Knicks' very own RJ Barrett. Let's take a closer look, starting with the RJ Barrett rookie extension. RJ Barrett is one of the most impressive youngsters in the NBA. The 22-year-old Canadian took the league by storm in his rookie season before exploding onto the season last year. In an even more impressive manner, he averaged 20 points and almost 6 rebounds per game, with a number of teams interested in acquiring his services. But the Knicks aren't too keen to part ways with their young superstar yet. As per reports, the New York franchise is close to finalizing a deal worth $120 million with Barrett's representatives as they try to keep him with the franchise for years to come. It's a 4-year rookie extension which would keep Barrett in New York for a good part of his peak, and if they can manage his fitness, he'll be one of the most sought-after players in a few years' time. This deal will end one of the NBA's most embarrassing streaks, as Barrett will become the first New York draft pick to sign a multi-year extension since the turn of the century. If things go well and the deal is finalized, Barrett will become the cornerstone of the franchise for years to come, and it's more than well-deserved for the Canadian, who has been so impressive since he arrived in the NBA. Given just how big the extension will be, there's very little chance that Barrett could be traded this season, and that complicates a lot of things for the Knicks' pursuit of Donovan Mitchell. Next up, what does it mean for the Mitchell pursuit? The New York franchise has been after Mitchell for a very long time now. Mitchell too would love to return to New York, and that's why a deal was rumored to be close to completion. But with things still up in the air, let's take a look at what the Knicks have already offered for Mitchell. Their recent offer consisted of Evan Fournier, Obi Toppin, additional salary, and 2 unprotected first-round draft picks, but the Jazz rejected it and are holding out for more. Then there were the rumors of the Knicks including Julius Randle in the trade, but apparently the Jazz expressed their desire of wanting RJ Barrett instead. A move for Randle would have solved all issues for the Knicks and could have accommodated a move for Mitchell in an easier way, but Utah doesn't want him, complicating matters further. And the recent news of an extension for Barrett means that nobody knows what's going to happen in that trade. The Knicks handing out that rookie extension to Barrett signals their intention of keeping him and making him the cornerstone of the franchise. It also means that they're not willing to go all out for Mitchell. If that was the case, someone like Barrett would have been already on his way to Utah. So what happens now? Will this decision make the Jazz reconsider their options about trading Mitchell, or will they still be interested in a new offer from the Knicks? Moving on, the Mitchell matter is more difficult now. As per reports from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, the Knicks understand that acquiring Mitchell won't be easy. Jazz retained a huge interest in Barrett, and the Knicks actually included Barrett in some trade proposals, but they've decided to change all of that and are working on that extension, which should be completed ASAP. This makes the path to acquiring Mitchell much more difficult, and with the Jazz's valuation of Barrett so high, it could complicate matters further. In fact, the situation was already quite complicated, even before the extension. That's because of the Rudy Gobert trade to Minnesota, which truly ruined the trade market. Some analysts even believe that Kevin Durant could have been on his way out of Brooklyn if the Timberwolves hadn't made that big an offer to get Gobert. And it directly impacts Utah because they value Mitchell even higher than Gobert and continue to hold out for a much bigger package. If a deal is to be completed for Mitchell, now the Knicks and Jazz would need to return to the drawing board and think about what they need to do in order to facilitate a deal. Mitchell's got his heart set on a move to New York. Utah's willing to let him go, and the Knicks, despite the extension, do need a superstar to officially challenge for biggest honors, and neither camp's ruling out a move. Despite the recent developments, neither the Knicks nor the Jazz is ruling out a trade for Donovan Mitchell this offseason. Both franchises remain keen on finding a solution, and even after the Barrett extension, the Knicks are still the only franchise in the division that can make an offer to the Jazz and tempt them into selling Mitchell. Of course, though, it's not as close to happening as it was maybe a week ago, with talks having restarted fairly recently. Now, though, the possible inclusion of Julius Randle could be on the cards again. He hasn't lived up to the expectations after that fantastic year when he took the Knicks to the playoffs, and the fans aren't too happy with him. The franchise, too, has tried to move him on, and this offseason, many occasions, and it wouldn't mind diving into the trade market to make it happen once again. Of course, though, they'll need to include multiple first-round picks to facilitate the deal and convince the Jazz, but whether or not that's enough is another matter altogether. altogether. In fact, some reports even suggest that Quentin Grimes, the Knicks guard, could be included in a deal. Either way though, this trade isn't dead yet, and once the talks restart, potentially in late September, a solution could finally be found. Now, in other news. First up, Mitchell removes Jazz from social media bios. With rumors over his future continuing into September, now, in a solution not in sight, Donovan Mitchell has removed Utah Jazz from his social media bios. This has intensified rumors that Mitchell's set to be traded from the Jazz, and it's surprising, especially after the Knicks handed an extension to RJ Barrett, who was supposed to be included in the deal. The guard changed his bio from "Be Humble, former Louisville guard, #L1C4, Utah Jazz guard," to "Be Humble only." Now, some believe that Miami is ready to step its interest up following the Knicks' $120 million extension for Barrett. As per some sources, they remain the favorites for this trade. We'd still advise the Heat fans to exercise caution and take these rumors with a pinch of salt. But if you can't even get excited about rumors in the offseason, then what's the fun in supporting a team in the NBA? Next, the Knicks not the only suitor for Donovan Mitchell. Even though the Knicks have been the favorites and probably will remain the favorites for the trade for Mitchell this offseason, they're not the only team looking to acquire his services. In fact, Jazz won't be opposed to keeping Mitchell if they can't find a suitable offer, and we doubt they're just saying this to entice a better offer anymore. But apparently, the likes of the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards are closely monitoring proceedings. Some reports believe that Utah front office is actually interested in a couple of offers they've received, as per Spence Checketts and Andy Blarson, and that's outside of New York. There's a mystery team in the running for Mitchell too, making everything a lot more fun. While we're not sure we buy this from the Utah sports radio host Spence Checketts, it's still a rumor to keep an eye on. Lastly, what can Stanley Johnson bring to Utah? Last week, the Lakers moved for Utah Jazz's Patrick Beverley in a trade that sent Talen Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson to Utah. While we know some stuff about Horton-Tucker, what can Johnson bring to the Jazz? Well, the forward is 26 years old and stands at 6'6". Having played at Arizona, he was the 8th overall pick in the 2015 draft by the Detroit Pistons and played for them until 2019. Then he joined the Pelicans, and 2 years later, he moved to the Raptors. There was a 10-day contract with the Bulls before impressing on one of the multiple 10-day contracts with the Lakers, and he's a good player in rotation. He averages 6.3 points, 3.1 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per 20.1 minutes, and has 1 year left on his contract. The Jazz will be hoping he can make some contributions and improve those career averages during his stay in Utah. It's not quite the star signing the fans were hoping for, but it could be a useful one in the Jazz's rebuild. And that's a wrap for this video. Do you think Mitchell will end up in New York? Let us know in the comments down below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.